All right, we're live. Good morning, everybody. Chuck Holton here, coming to you from the East Coast of America, where it's just after 10:30 in the morning. And we saw overnight some developments in the war between Israel and Iran. And I said that on purpose. Hang on a second. Let me fix this. There we go. The war between Israel and Iran, specifically, I think that this entire conflict has been between those two countries. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming on. Make sure you hit that like button down there. And some of the videos that I'm referring to here will go up over at chuckholton.com on my locals page. So you can go to chuckholton.com and see some of the things I'm talking about. I wanted to get this up quickly this morning because I'm at my son and daughter-in-law's house spending time with my grandbabies, and so I didn't want to get too involved here. But we need to talk about what happened last night between Iran and Israel. I was driving until about 3 o'clock this morning, so I saw the news of this about 2:30 in the morning Eastern time, which was just after, it was Friday morning in Israel when this came out. Now, so let's just go down what we know so far. There was an explosion in a town called Isfahan in Iran. There were some explosions in the air as well. Now, Israel has not claimed responsibility for that, but the United States leaked information saying that it was Israel that did it. And we'll talk more about why the United States felt it necessary to do that in a minute. But Iran, for its part, says that there was an explosion, that they shot down an attack. They stopped an attack. They didn't say exactly if it was missiles or drones, but it sounds like Iran is downplaying this. Number one, they're saying there was no damage. It was, very light attack, and that it may have actually come from inside Iranian territory, which would be interesting if that were to happen. It sounds like Iran is trying to do everything it can to de-escalate this, to keep it from going any further, because if it was a serious attack, then Iran would be forced just politically to retaliate. But since it's not, it was such a small attack that even some of the ministers on the war cabinet in Israel have said it was, quote, lame, which many people will will definitely agree with, because one missile, whatever it was, drone, some kind of munition, even if it struck its target, which it apparently was targeting one of the launch sites where the large attack from Iran came from, earlier last week. Even if it did strike and wasn't shot down, it's just one, maybe two missiles. Now, they also struck apparently a site inside Syria. Now, let's talk about this. The United States then came out and said, okay, that's it. Israel responded and we're all done here, right? Of course, the United States is trying very hard to de-escalate this situation and to keep it from becoming a much bigger conflict in the region. I get that, of course. From the standpoint of Iran, however, the Iranians see this as a win. The Iranians are like, we fired 300 missiles at Israel, and we got 1 or 2 missiles in return and virtually no damage. They're going to see this as justification. this says to Iran, we can attack Israel and it's not really going to cost us anything. From the Israeli standpoint, I don't know how this plays at home. If you're watching from Israel, maybe you can comment, hear what people in Israel are thinking about this. Without a doubt, there are going to be a vocal number of people in Israel who are going to be very unhappy with this response. It didn't look like it hurt Iran at all, didn't target any of their nuclear sites or anything like that. Now let's talk for a second about why Israel might have chosen this as the route for retaliation. They said they were going to do something. Of course, after such an unprecedented attack from Iran, first time in history that Iran has directly attacked Israel, they had to do something, and they said they were going to do something, and they apparently had some other launches planned that had been aborted for whatever reason, I don't know, earlier in the recent days. But one or two missiles? Why is that? Well, I did some reading, and as it turns out, Israel doesn't admit to having any long-range ballistic missiles. But it's believed that they do have some, but if they do have some, it's not very many. They have very, very few in terms of missiles that could strike Iran. The ones that they do have could easily carry nuclear warheads, but don't have to carry nuclear warheads, so they could put conventional warheads on them. But they probably, I mean, the number that they have is probably in the dozens, not in the hundreds. And so as it turns out, Israel also has some drones that could make the trip and could strike inside Iran. They might be one way if they did that. They might not be able to go there and back. Some of them perhaps could. But they don't have that many of the drones either. It's not like they have thousands of them. Whatever missiles or drones that they did decide to attack Iran with would be much more likely to strike their targets because they're higher quality than the ones that Iran has. But Iran also doesn't have anything like the Iron Dome system. They have some air defense capabilities which are without a doubt arrayed around their most sensitive military or nuclear sites. But Iran has a lot more territory that it's got to protect. I mean, the territory of Iran is like 80 times larger than the territory of Israel. And there's no way that they could cover that much territory. So that means that maybe Israel doesn't need quite as many. They don't need hundreds and hundreds of missiles or drones like Iran would need. However, they don't have enough for a sustained attack. They have some that could be launched from their submarines. They have some that could be launched from fighters. They have plenty of munitions for their fighters, and so their F-35s could make it to Iran and bomb things there. So it's not like they don't have any options. What I'm getting at is that Israel doesn't have options that would allow it to fight a protracted war of attrition against Iran without significant help from the United States or other partners. They don't have a big missile force in Israel. They have one, but it's just pretty small. So I don't think it was ever even on the table that Israel could send 300 missiles at Iran. Iran being so large and so spread out, they would likely need hundreds of missiles to conduct a major strike against the country. But they would rely more on quality than quantity, most likely. I mean, they'd have to. So this strike, now, again, Israel has not claimed responsibility for this explosion that happened in Isfahan. Isfahan, incidentally, is pretty far from the border. It's not very, it's maybe 600 kilometers inside Iran, inside the borders of Iran. And so it may have been more of just a message that Israel was sending to Iran saying, we can strike very deep inside your country if we want to. Now, there is the matter of airspace between Israel and Iran. We should probably be thankful that the two countries are separated by a good 1,000 miles or more of desert between Jordan and Iraq, or Saudi Arabia, Syria, Kuwait. You know, all of those countries sort of array themselves between these two belligerents. And that's definitely a good thing, I'd say. I mean, if they were very close together, it would be much more likely that they'd be in much more conflict. And Iran has a much larger ground force military than Israel does. And so Iran would be able to threaten Israel much more directly with ground forces if, for example, they were neighbors, you know, if they shared a border. But they don't, so that's good. But what that means is that any fighting that they do is going to have to cross through the airspace of other countries. Now, it's telling that, it tells us something, that this attack was not hindered in any way by Jordan or Iraq, Saudi Arabia, anything like that. And without a doubt, the munitions that were fired from Israel would have had to have crossed Jordan, Iraq, and unlike last week when Iran attacked Israel, this time the Jordanians, the Saudis, nobody did anything. They just let it go. Now, they could close their airspace. Somebody asked me about that, sent me a question and said, you know, what does it mean when a country closes its airspace? It just means that they shut down air traffic. They say nobody's allowed to come in here. And they turn off civilian traffic. Civilian traffic has to divert around the country. That's been happening in Ukraine for years now. You know, there haven't been commercial flights inside Ukraine since February 2022. I was actually on one of the last flights into Ukraine right before the war started, into Kyiv. And there have not been commercial flights in Kyiv since then. So the airspace has been closed. And if you actually look at, there's various different apps you can get that will show you all the air traffic in the world, and you can see where all the planes are and everything. If you look at like Skyscanner or something like that, and you'll see a big black hole over Ukraine because all of the flights just divert and go around. Somebody that's going on our trip to Armenia in a couple weeks, coming up in May, contacted us a couple days ago and was very concerned about this tension, the fighting between Iran and Israel, and said, our flight path, it looks like, goes directly over Iran. You know, should we cancel? Should we cancel our trip? And I said, if there's danger of flying over Iran, they won't fly over Iran. They'll just go around it. If Iran closes its airspace, and it did last night, it closed its airspace to commercial traffic, then all the flights that would have flown over Iran's airspace just have to divert. They just have to go around. So it's not a big deal. Sometimes it's a bigger deal than it is in this case, but in this case, it's not a huge deal. And in fact, within an hour or two, the airspace was opened back up again over Iran and commercial flights resumed. So closing the airspace is they make a declaration. They put out a notice to airmen and say there's no traffic allowed in this area right now. But that doesn't really apply to military aircraft, especially if you've got an F-35, because an F-35 can pretty much go wherever it wants, and it probably has been. It's very likely that the Israelis have been flying missions over Iran for some time with F-35s, because those things are basically invisible to whatever air defense Iran brings to bear. So that's not really going to affect Israel. If they wanted to strike inside Iran, they have the capability to do so with their aircraft. But like I say, they just don't have a lot of missiles or drones. They do have some that would reach. They just don't have a lot of them. And so you're not going to see massive waves of missiles and drones coming out of Israel going towards Iran. It's just not going to happen. Now, let's talk about why the United States would leak the information that Israel did this. It is kind of a backhand to Israel for the United States to leak this information. It is certainly not a friendly gesture to Israel that they did so. What this shows to me is that the Biden administration is so desperate to not anger the mullahs in Tehran that when Israel did the polite thing, if there's such a thing as being polite in war, when Israel did the polite thing and alerted the United States, hey, heads up, we're going to be striking Iran tonight, the United States immediately comes out and calls Iran and says, it's not us, don't be mad at us, we didn't do it. This removes Israel's ability to have any kind of deniability when it comes to this strike. I mean, the strike that initially sort of kicked all of this escalation off, which was the strike that happened in Damascus, Syria, on the consulate there that killed Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps general and other high-ranking officials on April 1st, that strike was never claimed by Israel. Now, everybody understands Israel to have done it, but Israel doesn't typically comment on things like that. They just keep their mouths closed. And that in and of itself is a sort of de-escalation tactic. Because if Israel doesn't claim it, then there's always at least a little bit of doubt as to who actually did this attack. And if there's a little shred of doubt, then that's going to give pause to anybody who's considering a retaliatory strike, or at least it should. So by coming out the United States and immediately pointing the finger at Israel and going, they did it. I'm sure the Biden administration felt like in their feckless way that they are avoiding escalation in the conflict. But what they're really doing is once again throwing Israel under the bus and actually making it probably more likely that Iran would retaliate against Israel because now they know Israel actually did it. We've seen this kind of, I would call it geopolitical missteps over and over and over and over again from the Biden administration. And I really think that it's partially because the people who are pulling the strings in the Biden administration, I'm not going to say it's Joe Biden, but whoever is pulling the strings in the Biden administration, what we have seen is that in Democratic administrations, going back to Bill Clinton, and even Jimmy Carter, I guess, they're very unskilled when it comes to the use of military power or the projection of American power overseas. They tend to have this mindset that was characterized by Marie Harf, actually, during the Obama administration, when they were talking about ISIS, where they said, that, she said in a news briefing, well, you know, if these people, if we could just give them jobs, they would not be cutting people's heads off and lighting people on fire. They just need more opportunities in life, and then they would be friendly. Well, that's a naive at best, ridiculous mindset, and displays a fundamental lack of understanding about how radical Muslims think, about how terrorist regimes operate, about how tyrannical dictatorships work, and especially about how the Middle East functions. Because in the Middle East, the projection of power is everything. And being nice to your neighbor is always and everywhere in the Middle East seen as weakness, not as the strength that it actually is. We know, I mean, I know as a Christian that the meek shall inherit the earth. Meekness is not weakness, it's strength under control. And so if I have the ability to crush you, but I choose not to, I choose to let it go. That's the magic and the power of forgiveness. This is something that is not understood in Muslim societies. There is very, very little understanding of the concept of forgiveness in Muslim societies. It's just not a big thing in Islam. Forgiveness, redemption, liberty, these are concepts that are uniquely Christian in their origins. And we know that because if you go back in history and look at cultures that have not had traditionally, have not had any influence from Christianity, like Afghanistan, they have literally no words for forgiveness. Sometimes you'll find these cultures, they don't even have a word for it. They don't even have a word for redemption. They don't even have a word for liberty. And so when Christianity shows up and introduces these concepts, it's a world-changing event. Now, Judaism does have a concept of forgiveness. They do have a concept of liberty. And it makes me wonder what would happen in the Middle East if, say, Bibi Netanyahu stood up and publicly announced, Iran just threw 300 missiles at us and drones and everything, but we're going to choose to forgive. And so, Iran, we forgive you. Well, I can tell you two things. First of all, that would be seen as weakness by Iran, and it would be seen as weakness by many inside Israel. Now, people like us, if you're a Christian, we might see that and go, wow, I mean, that would make my respect for Bibi Netanyahu go through the roof. But, okay, somebody needs to deal with this. I thought I had somebody online to deal with this. Okay. Oh, there we go. CBN took care of it. Okay. Obviously, that would make Christians go, "Wow, what a mature response." But it may not have the effect that we would hope it would have on things in the Middle East, because and here's why. Here's why forgiveness is not really something that can be wielded well by a nation's leadership. Forgiveness, like charity, is an individual concept. It's a concept that applies to individuals. The magic of forgiveness works because when you hurt me and I come to you and I say, "You hurt me, but I forgive you for that," it kind of throws a wrench into your works. It makes you step back and go, "Whoa, what? I was expecting a fight here, and I'm not getting one." But it's not the job of a government to ask forgiveness for its own people. The job of a government is to protect its people. Now, if the people want to come together and hold a big rally and say, collectively, we are choosing to forgive you, whether that's, Iran. I mean, just imagine in our own country, I've often thought about this, what would happen if, there's all this talk of reparations in the United States, that, reparations for slavery, even though the people who would be receiving the reparations did not suffer under slavery. The people who would be paying the reparations did not propagate slavery or have anything to do with it. So, from a political standpoint, this is kind of an idiotic thing. But what if, instead of demanding reparations, former, descendants of slaves all across America, and that, by the way, incidentally, would not only include black people, people of African descent. There were many people that were slaves that were not of African descent, but actually some of my relatives were slaves from Ireland. But what if they, instead of demanding reparations, came together and held a big rally and said, "We collectively extend forgiveness to the people who enslaved us. We're going to forgive, and we're going to move past this. We're going to move on." Just imagine how healthy and how wonderful that would be for our country. It wouldn't help the politicians much, though, would it? And so, okay. I see. I've got my comments bar froze up, and I'm like, how come nobody's leaving comments anymore? We got 6,000 people online. Speaking of which, folks, we got 6,000 people online, 6,600 people online. Please go hit that like button. It really does help. It tells YouTube's algorithm that a lot of people want to watch this, and they go show it to people who have never seen CBN before. So it brings CBN a lot of new viewers, people who need to hear our reporting and would like to hear our reporting. And so if you look at the growth of CBN's YouTube page since October 7th, it's just been incredible. But that's because people want to hear about what's going on in Israel. Now, the average view duration says that so far we've had 32,000 people that have watched this stream for some amount of time. We've got 6,600 people on right this minute. So what that means is that the group of people that are watching right now probably weren't watching at the beginning, and so I need to repeat myself a little bit. So if you were watching from the beginning, that's why. But just to give you a quick rundown on what happened, the Israeli government apparently decided to retaliate against Iran. They did so in a very, very limited fashion by striking only 2 places that we know of, one in Syria and only one inside Iran in a place called Isfahan, deep inside Iran. Iran, for its part, says that the strike was ineffective, that they were able to shoot it down or whatever. We don't know. It'd be very, very difficult to get solid information out of Iran, because even if there were citizens of Iran who wanted to get the information out about the effects of the attack, most likely, since they were aiming at a military installation, civilians wouldn't have access to see what the damage was. Now, that doesn't mean that Iran doesn't know, that Israel and the United States don't know whether or not it was effective. They likely know exactly what they were able to strike and what kind of damage they caused. And that's the one real missing piece in this this event, is since the extent of the damage is not known, just because they only sent one missile into, as likely it was a ballistic missile, into Iran, doesn't necessarily mean that they did not get their message across, because it depends on what they hit. If the Israelis were able to strike in a very precise fashion at something that was incredibly important to the mullahs in Tehran or to Iranian generals, to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, like, for example, if they were able to put a missile right through the window of the office of the head of the IRGC, something like that, or something that would send a strong message without having a major impact, killing a bunch of civilians. You understand? You have to get the difference in the strategy here. Excuse me. Iran's strategy was to shoot 300 missiles at Israel, just Israel in general. And we know that they weren't all aimed at military targets, because some of them were shot down literally over the Dome of the Rock, one of the most holy sites in all of Islam. Can you imagine what would have happened if the Dome of the Rock had been struck by a missile? This would, you talk about kicking off prophetic realities, that would do it, okay? But the Iron Dome system shot down rockets right over downtown, the old city of Jerusalem. So Iran's strategy is to just fire a whole bunch of explosives at Israel and hope to kill as many people as possible. Indeed, the only casualty from that entire attack that we know of inside Israel was a 7-year-old Bedouin girl who was just minding her own business and was gravely injured by shrapnel from a missile. I say that we know of because it turns out that about half of the missiles that Iran fired never made it out of Iran. They fell inside Iran because they were poorly maintained, poorly, fired. We don't know exactly why, but they fell inside Iran. And so it's likely that there was more that happened in terms of casualties, but the casualties were actually among the Iranian people, and we're likely not going to hear about those casualties anytime soon. Getting information out of Israel is pretty tough. So one tired mama has said, why such a pansy response from Israel? Well, it may look that way, but this is what I'm getting at here, is that it depends on what they struck. Israel's strategy was not to just blanket attack. They didn't go for carpet bombing like Iran did. They sent a precision-guided munition into Iran and struck something. Now, again, Iran claims to have shot it down. We can't believe anything that Iran says, like nothing. As a matter of fact, if Iran says it was shot down, then it almost makes it more likely that it was not shot down, because anything that comes out of Iran is likely to be a lie. And so it depends more on what they struck. Again, if they were looking to send a message, they could send one missile, and if they hit the right thing, it would send the message to Iran. Like, again, they could strike the office, because look, the difference between Western precision-guided munitions and Eastern precision-guided munitions is pretty large. In Ukraine, we have seen Russian precision-guided munitions, their the radius or their margin of error, so to speak, is something like 700 meters. 700 meters, that's almost a square kilometer. That's pretty far. Okay, that's not exactly, so what I've always said is that a Russian precision-guided munition can likely hit the block or within a block or two of whatever they're aiming at. An American precision-guided munition could hit the window of a specific window in a specific building of whatever we're aiming at. That's a massive difference, because a precision-guided missile has the ability to take out a building, or it could be dumbed down and have a smaller warhead and take out a smaller portion of that building. Or we actually have munitions now that don't even have explosives on them. They're so accurate. It's called the Switchblade. They're so accurate, we can kill a person, a particular person that's walking down the street, without killing anybody near him, because it just has these blades that come out of the precision-guided munition and just chop the guy to bits, which is pretty gruesome, but it tells you something about the accuracy of American precision-guided munitions. Russia doesn't have anything like that, and they don't really care, because Russians precision-guided, they have no problem with collateral damage. The mindset is different. Iran's mindset is different as well. Iran, it's not that they don't care about collateral damage. They desire it fervently. They want to kill civilians in Israel. So that's a whole different mindset. So because we have this missing piece of information, we don't really know exactly what they hit with this munition. It could very well be that Israel got the message across to Iran by what they struck, but we just don't know, because Iran's not going to tell us, Israel's not going to tell us. The only people that might tell us is the United States, and they were doing that out of bad faith against Israel. And that, again, the feckless foreign policy that we keep seeing out of this administration is really mind-numbing. The amount of time that they spend throwing our allies under the bus and trying to placate our adversaries and our enemies is making America a very untrustworthy partner on the world stage. Really, the only reason any of our allies have anything to do with America right now is because of our money. That's the only thing that, because they will continue to be nice to us, to be polite to us, kind of like we're kind of like that creepy uncle that came over at Thanksgiving that you really didn't like to be around because he was just kind of weird, but he was nice because he would slip you $5 now and then. that's kind of what America has become on the world stage. People want us for our money, but they don't respect us. Our allies don't really respect us. Our adversaries certainly don't fear us. And that is not a good place for America to be. Now, let's see if we can answer a few questions here. 7,800 people online. Folks, please go hit that like button. And if you want to follow more of my reporting, I'm going to be doing more about what's going on today over on the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. You can go to the Hot Zone and subscribe over there and hit that notification bell and get, hang on a second. Yeah, you can get notified when I'm about to go live over there and then not miss the lives that I do over on my channel. So I'm just going to put in the chat thing here, I'll put a link to that and we can pin that message to the top. So you can go to the top there and hit that link and go subscribe on the Hot Zone. And also I will be putting up more information about what's going on in Israel and immigration and a bunch of other things that I'm tracking right now. And you can find that over at chuckholton.com. So go to chuckholton.com and that'll take you to my locals page and you can find out anything. For those of you who were asking about the training weekend we've got going at Maple Fork Lodge, it is completely booked. We don't have any more space. The only thing we have space for right now is our upcoming trips to Armenia. We've got a couple of slots left for each of the 3 trips to Armenia in May, June, and September. So if you'd like to go to Armenia with me and my wife, we're taking a tour over there and we'll be showing people around that amazing country. And if you go, Armenia, like I don't even know where that is. That's the point. The reason that we're taking tours to Armenia is because it should be up there at the top of your bucket list, and people just don't know about it because it was behind the Iron Curtain. But it's every bit as beautiful as Israel. I'm sorry, Israel. Every bit as historic as Israel. Every bit as beautiful as Italy. The food is every bit as good as Greece. The people are super nice, and it's all in one place, and it's a nice, cheap vacation. So if you'd like to come with us to Armenia, go to, just send me an email, hotzoneholton@gmail.com, hotzoneholton@gmail.com, and I'll send you a link to how to come to Armenia with us. Our trip to Israel is completely full. I still have people asking about that. So you don't have to ask. It's full. We're overbooked. We've got more people signed up than are going to be able to go for sure. Yeah, I've been to Armenia. HAK says, make sure you don't get kidnapped by ORGC. You probably mean IRGC in Armenia. That's not going to happen. IRGC is not going to kidnap me in Armenia. We've been to Armenia a whole lot, and that's not an issue. The national debt is way more than 16 trillion. Aaron Robert Cattell. The national debt is officially 37 trillion, and it's actually much higher than that. I could do a whole podcast about the national debt. I used to study that a lot when I was a stockbroker. But let's see here. Thank you. Will this incite nuclear retaliation? Kevin, no, it won't. Iran is trying already to downplay the effects of this strike. They're basically saying it caused no damage, it was shot down by Iran, and Iran saying, we win. Okay, that's it. Now, is it possible that Israel actually will strike again inside Iran? Absolutely. It could be that Israel has a much bigger attack up its sleeve. I kind of doubt it, but it's possible. Obviously, there are some people in the war cabinet that are not happy with this response. They've actually been tweeting out words like lame to describe Israel's response to Iran. And it does kind of look that way. It does kind of look pretty lame for Israel to send 1 or 2 munitions into Iran and a couple into Syria, which they've been doing already. Like, it doesn't seem like that's really that big a deal. But like I say, it all depends on what they struck. And we know that they did not target any nuclear facilities inside Iran. That doesn't mean that they won't. It doesn't mean they couldn't. It just means they didn't this time. We don't think that Iran has a nuclear weapon. We know that they are close. We know that they are trying to get one. And they have threatened that the minute they get one, they will hit Tehran with it. I don't think that actually would happen, but they say that they will. So I'm just looking here. Thank you, Welsh Dragon. I appreciate that, 10 pounds. The West still doesn't understand. Extremists interpret naivete, kindness, and generosity as weakness or stupidity. It's like trying to understand a psychopath. They don't process like normal people. Well, that's what I've been saying, is that extremists are not going to interpret kindness as kindness. They're going to interpret it as weakness. And it's not the job of a national government to be kind. It's a job of a national government to be just. Justice is what is its job. PC, thank you for the 19 pounds. It's just good. U.S. stopped Palestine getting UN membership last night. Yes. So there was a resolution to grant UN membership to Palestine, which is not even a country. There is no place called Palestine. Even Gaza is not called Palestine. Gaza and the West Bank are actually part of Israel. They're a semi-autonomous, sort of the self-governing part of Israel that is administered by the Arabs. But there is no place called Palestine. So how can they give membership in the UN to some place that doesn't actually exist? It'd be like giving it to Narnia or Wakanda. And it wouldn't surprise me if somebody brought it to a vote in the UN to give Wakanda membership in the United Nations. It would be just about as, it would make about as much sense to try to grant Wakanda membership in the UN as it would to try to grant Palestine. Wakanda is real, man. I got a funny story about that, but I'm not gonna tell it here. Maybe over on my channel, I'll tell you my funny story about Wakanda. So, all right. So we've got just a couple minutes left. Narnia forever. If you have a question, stick it in here now. And let's see here. Okay, so I'm familiar with all the history about Palestine. But Palestine has always existed, really? That's interesting. So we're just gonna we're not gonna put up with that. Free Narnia, yeah. So I want to mention just real quick the protests that we're seeing around the world, but in the United States especially, regarding this situation in Gaza. We had protesters shutting down freeways and airports in Portland, San Francisco, Chicago, places like that last week. And I just want to say the only reason that people are doing this is because they can get away with it. There was one place where they tried tried that and it didn't work out so well, and that was in Florida. Because in Florida, that's a felony, and they immediately arrested the people before they could even get the traffic stopped. They immediately arrested those people and hauled them off to jail. That is exactly what should be done with these protesters. I don't care if you think your cause is legitimate or not. Stopping traffic, blocking infrastructure is an act of war. Do you realize that whenever a country wants to go to war with another country, the first thing that they target is the infrastructure of that country? Russia is targeting infrastructure and has been ever since the beginning of the war with Ukraine. So they're blowing up power plants and airports and things like that. Because if you disable the infrastructure of a country, you disable their ability to make war. And so this is not legitimate, a legitimate form of protest. We have a word for, what these people are doing, which is essentially punishing people that have nothing to do with the issue that they're upset about. And it's called terrorism. That's exactly what terrorists do, is they try to hurt people in order to bring attention to their cause, but the people that they're hurting have nothing to do with their cause. That's terrorism. And so it should be treated as such. When people decide to sit down in the middle of the freeway, the U.S. government has a duty to its citizens to treat that for what it is and to immediately haul those people off. Now, they're getting more and more creative by bringing out barrels filled with concrete that have holes in them and are, oh, my light just died, that have holes in the barrels that they put their hands in and lock their hands together and things like that. There's a very, very simple solution to that. And all it takes is a chainsaw, and one time. That would never happen again. But we live in a civilized society where we don't cut people's arms off with chainsaws. But we could very easily drag them off to jail and charge them with terrorism, which would be a felony and would carry some very hefty prison time. We start doing that, and there's a word for doing that. It's called deterrence. We could deter people from trying to make life miserable in the United States. These people are marching and literally calling for death to America. Now, I'm all for the First Amendment, folks. But if you're calling for death to America, in America, you're a clown. I mean, you're literally taking advantage of the rights afforded to you by being in America to trash America, to call for the destruction of America. This is another thing that terrorists like to do. Terrorists like to use our rights against us, and we can't allow it. But we are allowing it, and it's making for a much less safe culture. And that's a problem that the UK, the United States, and many other countries in the West are not addressing, but they're going to have to, because as people get more and more frustrated and they start taking matters into their own hands, this world will get a whole lot more messy, a whole lot more bloody, and a whole lot less comfortable to live in. So that's all I got to say about that. All right, so we're going to pray. And yeah, why aren't they being charged for burning the flag? Well, One Tired Mama, I believe the Supreme Court has already ruled on that flag burning is actually at first protected by the First Amendment. Now, one time when I was in D.C., there were some guys that were trying to start a flag on fire, and there were a bunch of cops standing around them. This is during the Obama administration. A bunch of cops standing around them, basically protecting them while they were burning the American flag on the mall in Washington, D.C. And this big burly guy just went charging right through the line of cops, just went right into this group of protesters like they were a bunch of bowling pins, knocking people out of the way, grabbed that American flag and took off running with it and got back outside the group of policemen. And the group of policemen just sort of closed ranks and let him through. It would be nice to see more Americans do that. If you disagree with people burning the American flag, then maybe if you see somebody trying to disrespect the flag, you would actually do something about it. And again, unfortunately, in today's day and age, that would probably get you in trouble, but I think it's going to take the kind of civil disobedience where Americans are willing to get in trouble in order to reset the standard for what's acceptable in our society. So let's just pray. We'll pray about it. Lord God, we just come to you right now with more than 6,000 people praying together. And we ask you for your mercy on our countries. We ask you for your mercy on America. We ask for your mercy on England. We ask for your mercy on Australia and South Africa and Brazil and all the places that are represented here, the Philippines, Lord. Father, we are just so saddened by the state of world affairs, the things that we see in this world. But we know that, Lord, the world's been a mess since the beginning because it's full of people and people are fallen. And we need your redemption. The world needs your redemption, Father. So I pray that you would bring that redemption, that you would show us how we could rightly respond to what we see around us, whether we should engage in civil disobedience or not, whether we should get involved or not. Help us know how to do it correctly. Help us to be courageous and not to be afraid and to actually be willing to stand up and be counted among the righteous. Father, you say in your word that righteousness is what exalts a nation. So we pray for righteous people to be raised up in our countries and that they would actually be able to make a difference and they would show the world what redemption looks like, what freedom, what true freedom looks like through our courageous actions, Lord. But just guide us. Send your Holy Spirit to give us wisdom and protection and discernment as we go through our daily lives and we see the chaos around us. Help us to get involved in the most loving way possible. Help us to love the people we meet and show them a fearless, courageous, generous, and loving people. Help us to be able to show the world what forgiveness really looks like. Thank you for teaching us what it looked like by sending your Son to die for us. We were your enemy, Lord. It's not like we were begging you to come and save us. We were your enemy, and yet you still came and died for us, personally. And we're so grateful for that, Lord. I just pray that more people would see that and would just throw their souls at your feet, turn their lives over to you, and let you guide them and direct them. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, folks, thank you very much for following us, for being a part of this community. I pray that you would go and, well, first of all, you donate to CBN. That's what keeps us on the air. You can go to cbn.com and get a tax deduction for that if you're into that sort of thing. But if not, you can donate right here on YouTube like many people have. We really appreciate those people. Or again, just go to cbn.com and make sure that you subscribe to the channel here. Some people have said they can't figure out how to subscribe. If you're watching this this live and you don't see a subscribe button down below, you may have to click on the icon that says CBN News, a little round blue and black icon that says CBN News. If you click on that, then you will see the subscribe button. Also, like I say, please go to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton and subscribe over there. I'll be live later on talking about these issues and much more So thank you again for watching. We appreciate all of you. And I'm going to see if I can turn off this live stream without it disappearing, because we've had a lot of problems with it actually just keeling over and dying on us. So God bless you all. We'll see you again next time. Chuck Holton.